So there are a few different ways to answer interview questions, but one effective way is to use the STAR method. So first, we would look at the situation or task. Provide a description of a specific past event with detail that aligns with the employer's question as much as possible. Don't forget to include specific details, like for instance, your job title at the time or where you were working. The action you took. Describe the actions you took and be sure to keep the focus on what you did in the situation. Here's where you can be strategic. Make sure you highlight a number of your skills during your answer. Again, remember, be specific. Don't speak in general terms or tell the employer what you would do. Tell them what you did do. Results you achieved. This is key. We're an outcomes-based society now, and so this is really important in tying up your answer. What was achieved? What was the outcome? What did you accomplish or what did you learn? Make sure that you include that. Let's examine how this really can look or work. So turn, I'm great with people. I've worked on many school projects in a group and we always receive strong marks. Into, last semester, one of our small group projects was to complete a written proposal for wetlands reconstruction in our local community. Within this group, I was able to act as the organizer, ensuring that others stayed on task and completed their work. I also played a major part in collecting field data and used Excel to summarize the data for the report. The final mark for this project was 85%, and we received very positive feedback from our instructor. You can hear how much stronger the second answer is. A lot of skills were strategically built into this answer. For your Take Action assignment this week, I want you to list 2 things that you're going to make sure you do when preparing for your next interview. When answering questions, it's always important to make sure your answers are truthful. You want to get the job, but you also want to keep it down the road. Pay attention. Listen closely to the question the interviewer is asking. You can ask them to repeat it if you need them to. I find especially if it's a multi-part question, sometimes you can start your answer and then not be sure if you've answered every single one of their questions. So it's okay to say, oh, could you ask me the last 2 parts of that again? If you're unsure what they mean or what they're really asking, definitely ask for clarification. Make sure that you stay on topic. Stay focused with your answer. And remember to include your results. It's important to maintain good eye contact, and it's even okay to smile and laugh within your answer. Avoid those one-word answers. You need to provide some details when you're answering. Try not to start off with, if you're asked something like, tell me about your experience in the field. Well, I don't really have any experience in the field. Instead, focus on what you do have. What did your college program include that would relate to their answer? Watch for nonverbal cues. If the interviewer is starting to look at the time, maybe you need to shorten your answers and be really succinct and focused with them. There are some illegal questions in Canada that employers are not to ask, such as age, and I often get asked, why would age make a difference? Well, what if they had a 19-year-old work for them in the past and it didn't work out and they just don't want to hire a 19-year-old in the future? They're not allowed to ask you about your ancestry, color, or race, your citizenship, your ethnic origin, your place of origin, your creed or your beliefs. They can't ask you about a disability, your family status. Usually they get around that one by asking a question like, what do you like to do in your free time? The number one answer would be, I like to spend time with my family. Why wouldn't you want to share about your family? Well, maybe in the past they've had an employee that had daycare issues, for instance. They're not allowed to ask if you're married or you're single. They can't ask for gender identity or your gender expression. They can't ask for a record of offenses during the interview. They can in the employment, like once a job offer is on the table and you're filling out an application and having to sign. They can't ask your sex, including if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. And they cannot ask your sexual orientation. All of these are potential things that someone could be discriminated against. I also just want to say that most illegal questions are asked out of ignorance, not with malicious intent. So you really have a couple different courses of action that you can take. You can answer briefly and move on to another topic, or don't answer and try to redirect. If the question is blatantly discriminatory, you may decide that you don't want to work for that company and end the interview at that point. At the end of the interview, it's common for the employer to ask if you have any questions. So be prepared. I always encourage people to write these down on the notepad that they're going to be taking in with them. One thing that often happens when you're at the end of the interview and they say, and that was our final question, do you have any questions for us? Your brain kind of has a party. It's like, woohoo! Oh, the pressure's off. I don't have to answer any more questions. I did it. And then your mind goes blank. And a common answer for this question then is, I can't think of anything. Because at that moment, you really can't. So have those questions written down. And it's okay to say, oh, I'm just going to refer to the questions I have written down, if that's okay with you. So some of those questions you might want to think about asking or having written down are, when are you expecting to make a hiring decision? What are the challenges facing someone in this position? What would be one of the first major projects I would be working on? What would the expected starting date be? Could you describe a typical day in this position? What would the regular hours be? What does the training look like for this position? Be sure to ask questions that have not already been addressed during the interview. So you've finally reached the end of the interview. What now? Well, it's important to thank the employer for their time. End your interview with a smile and a handshake. Provide references. See if they'll give you a business card so you can follow up with a thank you email. And we spoke about those last week in the lecture. Once you leave the interview, complete any needed follow-up. Maybe they asked you to email your references to them or a copy of a certification. Take the time to reflect about the interview. Write down some notes for yourself. Think about the types of questions that were asked. Maybe write down some of the specific questions. Were there any answers that you need to work on, that you really didn't feel you did well, or that you answered as strong as you potentially could have? So there's lots of do's and don'ts for interviews. First, make sure you're on time. Again, I always recommend 10 minutes early. Remember to smile, shake hands, be calm, Appear interested and motivated, like you want the job. We have heard from employers that have come into the college that the candidates just didn't seem all that interested. Listen carefully to make sure that you're answering the question that is really being asked. A few don'ts. Don't chew gum. It can be really distracting. Same as a clicky pen. Make sure you don't have one of those with you. Don't smoke just before walking in. That smoke can stay on you, and for some people, that will be negative. Don't wear a hat. It really shadows your eyes, especially ball caps, and you do want to have that good eye contact. Try not to fidget or cross your arms in front of you. Make sure your cell phone is turned off if you're taking it in with you. Don't bring friends or family. If you need to get a ride, just get dropped off. Okay? Best of luck on your next interview.